Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Trade Talk. I'm your host, Niko. This is episode 16, and today I'll be talking about some more spookier reads that I read kind of for the Halloween season. Now, I know this is airing a couple days after Halloween, and also wanted to give an update on the release schedule of this show on the Late Night Chat network of podcasts on SoundCloud. If you are only a listener of this show, I just quickly wanted to let the listeners know that we also do another show, me and my girlfriend Christine, called Weekly Wine Comic Time, where we talk about the new weekly releases of single issue comics. So if you are a comic fan and you only listen to this, definitely check out that, unless you don't want to get spoiled by some of the goings on of current comic book single issues that come out week to week, because that's more specific to that. If you're a collected edition reader, you may want to rather listen to this than that, which I fully understand. But if you ever want to hear some of our thoughts on any of the books that we're talking about, to maybe kind of look into maybe why you may want to pick up the collected edition when it does come out, it is a good show for that. If you and we try not to spoil everything, of course, but in order to talk about the books, we do talk about some things get spoiled in the current plot line. So but yeah, definitely check that out if you are a comics fan. I think if you're a fan of this show and you've never heard that one with me and my girlfriend Christine, Weekly Wine Comic Time, we have a great time. We drink some wine prior to talking about the books, and then we kind of do a rundown of a bunch of different picks of things that we've read that current week. So it's a fun show. So we a little bit of a schedule change. Normally Trade Talk came out on Fridays, but we've moved around some of the dates, along with the fact that we're doing YouTube videos for our main flagship show, which is the late night chat with JT and Niko show, which is me and my buddy JT. That is why it's called the Late Night Chat Network. That's basically the show where we kind of talk about everything and anything. And essentially that is the show that kind of launched all of this other stuff. So me being a comic fan, I figured I'd talk about comics on the network as well, and kind of release a couple other shows as a result of us doing the Late Night Chat podcast. And that's basically what kind of spawned all of this other stuff, trying to expand and get more content, different types of shows on the actual SoundCloud page. If you're a fan of this, you may not like that because it's not comic specific, but there is some fun things that we talk about over there. So, it's worth checking out if you are interested. It is on our SoundCloud page. That's the Late Night Chat show. That, because we now are doing YouTube videos of that, specific to that, I have no plans doing YouTube videos of my comic book reviews as of yet. I might at some point. But we changed the schedule up on that for the releases of the YouTube videos. Therefore, I'm pushing the Trade Talk back a day. So Trade Talk will now be released on Saturdays for you guys. Weekly Wine Comic Time will still remain to be released on Mondays. And as well as the Late Night Chat podcast will come out on Wednesdays, with the YouTube on Thursdays. So, and then hopefully, like I said, I'll talk about it on here if I end up doing some more comic-related YouTube videos, which eventually I would like to. But I may want to upgrade kind of our video capabilities before moving on to that. So we wanted to test the waters with that, with our Late Night Chat show first off and foremost. So we'll see what happens. Anyways, without further ado, let's get into the books I wanted to talk about today. Sorry about the long intro. I just wanted to kind of give a reasoning as to why this show was late. And by the time that this show gets posted, it'll actually be Sunday. It's just been a very busy week, and it's been difficult to kind of get this out on time. But moving forward, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to be up to date on every time an episode drops, or just, follow us on the Late Night Chat Network Instagram account, or my Instagram account, or on Facebook, where I usually make these posts. And if you have checked in on this show so far, week to week, thank you for that. Please let me know your feedback, what you enjoy, what you don't enjoy. Kind of, it helps make the show better, and I appreciate anybody who has checked it out thus far. All right, without further ado, though, let's get into the books I did want to talk about today. I'm sure that's what a lot of you are here for, not for updates on the channel, but I felt it was needed, especially with the release dates of these shows changing up a bit. All right, so first up, we got another manga here that I've recently read. I Am a Hero Omnibus Vol.1 through Dark Horse Comics. Now, I have not discussed any of the other omnibuses on this show. I kind of got caught up on this series and picked up a bunch of the volumes prior to me starting to record this show, and I just never got a chance or got around to discussing it. And the last volume just came out through Dark Horse Comics. These are great. I mean, these are 2-in-1 volume omnibuses. Like, they're still manga size, a little bit smaller through Dark Horse Comics, but they retail for about $20 US. And this contains about 2 of the, I guess, originally serialized manga volumes that came out in Japan in 1, and Dark Horse Comics has been publishing them. So great bang for your buck, and this has been a great series. This is, I've been told or heard that this is one of the best zombie mangas ever, and I really, really enjoyed it. I will say, reading this last volume, which concludes the series, though, I was a little disappointed with the ending. I just thought it was a little underwhelming. I mean, since I didn't speak on a lot of the other volumes, I'm not going to get too kind of deep into this, because if you're a listener to this show, you've never read this before, I don't want to spoil anything for potential listeners of this series. But if you have never checked out I Am a Hero, I definitely suggest picking it up. I am hopefully all the volumes are still in print, and if not, they will be reprinted eventually. Dark Horse is not always the best at keeping their manga series in print that they do end up releasing. But this is a little bit of an easier series to kind of get into, as it's only 11 volumes of these omnibuses that they have released. So if you're worried about jumping into a manga series that's still ongoing, or that there's too many volumes to go around, or it may cost you too much, this is a pretty good deal for what they've priced each of these omnibuses out at. And if you can get them for a cheaper price, it's even better. And definitely worth checking out. The first couple volumes I read, I couldn't actually really get into it. I probably picked up the first 4 or 5 volumes off at first, but then I ended up reading the first 2, and I wasn't really sure if it was for me or not, to be fair. Unlike some of maybe the other mangas that are more well known to us here in North America, or maybe that are more that we're able to relate more to, maybe because of the content, the subject matter, or like the way that the characters go on and speak to one another. This was a little bit hard to get into, I found, because like a lot of it kind of has to do with the way like Japanese culture like acts and speaks to one another, and like the way they look at the world, and the way that they like customary type stuff that goes on. And if you haven't read this, you may be kind of listening to me describe it, and you're like, that's odd. What does that have to do with this kind of the premise of this book, being it like a zombie manga? But it kind of is, because the main character in it, like as he kind of makes his way through this world, like just like the way like the mannerisms, like the like the way he acts, the choices he makes, the way he goes about them, how he sees himself, how he conducts himself, is all kind of very different than what you would normally see, I think. And then I think it reflects Japanese culture and the people. And at first, it was kind of strange in that sense. Like there was parts like where, like, for instance, like he made sure to like leave notes for people that had died, like, and stuff like that, about him taking some of their supplies, for instance. Like things like if you were going to compare it to The Walking Dead, where everyone's really ruthless and fucking unforgiving, and maybe once in a while you kind of would find a character that doesn't fit that mold, that kind of sticks to their ideals, or the way that they kind of made their way, like the way they were prior to this whole zombie breakout happening. But this is like, the characters are very, I guess, Japanese in that sense, compared to what you would expect from some of our zombie related media, like I said, most famously Walking Dead, that you can point to, right? So I think seeing the world through this main character's eyes, Hiromi, that's his name, and following him on his journey throughout this story was unique. And there was always also like a bit of a perversion throughout some of this too, that you kind of find sometimes in some of the Japanese culture, like their manga or their their movies or anime or whatnot, as well. Like there was a lot of like like there was young schoolgirls in this that he kind of was into, that he fell in love with, and people hooking up with one another you might not expect in this world, and just like and then and you see these things in other things too. I don't want to just single out Japanese or like mangas but it just in this story though, it just was very unique again to like more of the modern kind of zombie stories. And again, I can't not escape relating it back to Walking Dead, being a huge fan of Walking Dead and what most people would probably be into in terms of like zombie stuff nowadays. It's hard not to relate it to that. So it's very different in that sense. But once I got to about like the third Omnibus volume, which I guess is the fifth and sixth like single volumes that originally released in Japan, it really picked up and was moved at such a fast clip of interesting moments between the characters and the developments and the grotesque, horrific kind of scenes that happen in this. There's some weird shit that happens in this book, man, and like these again, like other like more interesting zombie takes, these not irregular. There's like almost like again, not to get too much into spoilers, but it turns out like the zombies are more connected to like a hive mind of zombies. Like it's much more than just like it grows like as the story goes on, like the this whole thing, right? So again, I'm trying not to spoil things, so that's why I'm trying to be a little bit vague, but it's not as simple as it sets out to be at first. It's more like, almost like Shaun of the Dead, where they're trying to make their way throughout the world, like everyday life kind of thing, and then they just notice that slowly and surely certain people are getting affected until they realize it's a huge outbreak, and it's like, I gotta grab my gun now and get out here and be on the road and try to fucking scrounge for food and you know what I mean, make my way through this new world, and just, they slowly kind of ease you into it, and people are still trying to kind of go on through everyday life at first without realizing that it's such a big, massive outbreak that it turns out to eventually be in this story. So, but like I said, once they kind of get into it, it's off to the races, and it moves at a very fast, exciting clip. Very interesting, weird out there kind of things that they do with this zombie, and by the time they get to the ending, I mean, the stakes have definitely risen to an extreme point where I guess maybe there wasn't only so much so that you could have done with this ending, but I felt that because of the way the book moved along, when I got to this final volume and read it, it felt a little underwhelming. I think they could have continued with it. I think they could have went off to, more interesting places, introduced more different characters. Didn't feel like I was done with it yet. At the same time, while I feel like it's great, like the book ended, like the creator didn't just milk this for everything he had and just kept it going for fucking like 90 volumes, like a One Piece type thing. Like it was good, and I enjoyed it throughout almost the whole time I read these books as they were coming out, as they've been re-released in these omnibus formats. But yeah, if I'm being completely honest, the ending was a little underwhelming for me. Now, is it definitely worth checking out if you have not as of yet? Absolutely. So don't take that into account. Like I said, it may be a little underwhelming. It was good. It wasn't a bad ending. The middle portion of this book, the journey itself leading up to this, I enjoyed much more than the start and the ending of it. So, the sandwich ends, I guess, of this, like, just weren't the greatest in my opinion, but still good and enjoyable, and definitely a worthwhile read. So definitely check this out if you have not yet. It's called I Am a Hero. The main character's name is like Hiromi, and he meets lots of different people along the way that kind of join him in his journey. And as the story progresses, there were some volumes dedicated really specifically to other characters in the world as well, and whether or not they tied into the main characters that we were following throughout the story, you'll have to see for yourself. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, but very interesting nonetheless. So great. And then next off, we got another volume of manga that just recently came out a couple weeks ago. This is the Drifting Classroom Volume 1, the Perfect Edition, which is a little bit of an oversized hardcover compared to most other manga. This says this it serves as the definitive edition of Kazuo Umez's timeless horror classic on the back. And I've heard this manga spoken about very highly from other people that I know that are into manga. I've read manga, and this is, if everyone kind of knows nowadays, it seems like Junji Ito, through his horror manga that he's released and has been recently re-released through Viz. They've been doing a great job over the last few years of re-releasing a lot of his out-of-print manga and these nice hardcover formats. And I think like his popularity is growing even more so. Like a lot of people that don't read a lot of manga, I find, have heard about this guy, or that just are into horror books, or like I said, don't really read manga, have been seeking out his work. And I think that he's been getting more and more popular. Then there's also the manga that he did, the Cat Diary stuff. So like a lot of people that were, have cats or fans of cats or like that kind of stuff, I think I've gravitated to his work, towards his work as well. So like, but this guy is a guy that he, I guess, like either from like, I guess he's from the 70s or 80s, like more like his art style even looks like more old school manga artist. Like it reminded me of like Tezuka almost, in a sense, like by looking at his work. I mean, you obviously, he comes from a different school and time of manga artists, so his art looks a little bit more simplistic and definitely more old school compared to some of the stuff that's coming out today. Like, this isn't a Shonen Jump kind of manga artist, for instance. Like, at least it doesn't look like most things coming out today. I think, at least for me and my limited knowledge, like the closest I could relate his art style to is more of like Tezuka, Astro Boy, creator, and of course many other things. But this was a perfect opportunity to jump on this, and if this sounds interesting to you, definitely pick this up. I think it retails at $35, I want to say, this hardcover, US. And similarly, this is about 2 volumes in one, and it's a little bit of a bigger scale. It's a beautiful looking hardcover through Viz that released it, and these are very out of print, these books. They're hard to come across, the original smaller manga English printings of The Drifting Classroom. So if, like me, you've never read this, but you've heard good things, or you're interested in what I have to say right now, this is the perfect time to pick this up, because the first volume is the only one that's out so far, and I think when it's all said and done, there'll be like probably 6 of these hardcover volumes. And I think, because I think it was about 12 of the smaller manga volumes that came out. So this is a very nice addition to have. And basically, this is almost like, it's basically like Lord of the Flies, in the sense of, like this classroom of kids, or the whole school, actually just for whatever reason ends up being transported to like another place. We're unsure what it is exactly, and I said it's kind of like Lord of the Flies, in the sense of like, all the kids are basically have to work together now and create. They slowly start creating their own society and assigning roles to each other for how they can help once they get there. And like the 6th graders got to kind of watch over, like, the kindergartners and stuff like that. So like it kind of gets divided up like that, but then individually, like each group kind of starts emerging and kind of taking their own place and role in this kind of new place that they've all been transported to. So it opens up with like 2 kids going to school, and one of them saying, "Oh, I forgot something at home," so he ends up going back home to grab it, and then from there, the other kid makes his way to school, ends up being there on time. The other one's running late, but then they get transported, the whole school, to this weird world, like, and we don't know where it is. And it's like almost like a wasteland type thing. Like they're in the desert, they're in the middle of the desert, but when they go out into the desert, there's all this like, like sand and stuff surrounding the school. But the further you get, like they encounter like weird and strange things. Like in this majority of the second volume, because like I said, this is like 2 in 1, the majority of the second half of this big hardcover, there's like this big like centipede type creature that's like giant size that ends up taking out a bunch of the students, just like, and attacking the school and like where they're set up.
or it's sort of not even a centipede, it's like a millipede. It's got like 1,000 legs, and it starts eating some of the students and chasing them. And once it got to that second half of the book, it really picked up for me. And as soon as this huge bug was like chasing students across this wasteland, this weird place that they're in, and they had to like fight against it, and there's like some of the teachers are there to help them, but a bunch of them get killed, and there's some teacher that's a huge asshole that's part of the faculty that ended up being transported there with the students, and he ends up like taking down a lot of the teachers, and like he thinks that they're running out of food in the cafeteria, so he's like trying to hoard all the food to himself, and he starts freaking out, and it's up to the students to take down the adult, essentially. So like I said, it has a lot of themes that tie into Lord of the Flies for sure, but it's kind of this crazy horror setting where anything and everything could happen in this weird time and place, I've been told by other people. As the books go on, it just gets crazier. So but majority of this one was basically a lot of setup of how they got there, how like the parents are reacting to it back in their world, because they don't know what happened to the students, what happened to their kids, because the whole school kind of just got transported there, and they're not aware of, they're trying to figure it out and make sense of what happened. But then one of the mothers of the main kid that we were following in this, you find out like this is almost like the place is taking the place they were transported to is like to some sort of futuristic post-apocalyptic wasteland, it seems like at this point, because she finds out if she leaves, like she left basically this knife for him to help protect himself, like in like the wall of like the school or something, and then like somehow on the in the time and place that they're at, he uncovered it in the wall at the school, but it was all like rotted away and old, basically, this knife, and like it was almost like it was there for centuries, right? But like meanwhile in her time, she ended up putting it into the wall, and like he was able to get it like directly after, but it was like something, somehow they're almost like parallel Earths, basically, like, or like, I'm a big Zelda fan, so if you think of the Dark Worlds in the original Link to the Past, I don't know if this reference is getting through to anybody, but basically, yeah, it's like a mirror universe, like, so basically anything that you do on this time and place may affect the other side of it, right? The other side of the coin, like the parallel of this world. So that's at least what it seems like so far. But then like you got things like these giant fucking bugs that are crawling across this world, this wasteland that's destroying kids, and they're basically trying to fight against it and stand against all the fucked up shit that's happening in this world. So it's really interesting. It's really interesting. And like I said, by the end of this volume, I was totally in. I'm definitely going to pick up the next one if you haven't. It's a good horror-themed manga, and definitely something worth checking out. Even if you're not into mangas, it's definitely really interesting, and the art is great, and yeah, it's well written, and definitely check this out. Come on, get on board, guys, because this Drifting Classroom, if you've never read it, is definitely worth checking out. Alright, so next up we got Clean Room. This is Volume 1. This is through Vertigo Comics. This came out a couple years ago. This is one of the books that launched with one of their last attempts, I think, Vertigo, to try to kind of fix their lineup before they basically now have said that Vertigo is no more over in DC Comics. This is written by Gail Simone, art by John Davis Hunt. Yeah, this was okay. There's 3 volumes to this, and I think this collects the first 6 issues. Yeah, so I don't think it went past like 18 issues if it's the 3 volumes, 6 issues apiece. That is the whole series. I picked up the first volume because I seen it on a whim, and I wanted to talk about some kind of more scary or horror-related titles, and I've always been kind of interested in this. John Davis Hunt was the artist most recently on Wildstorm by Warren Ellis, and I loved his stuff in there, and I loved his stuff here as well. A little bit of a different style, but you can definitely tell it's the same artist, but I think he was just bringing some different things to the table with this book. First off, very horrific scenes in this. Very fucked up, weird-looking scenes. If I had to say the best thing about this book going away from this, although I will say straight up I didn't love it, was the artwork. He did a great job in this book, and depicting some horrific and very weird fucking scenes every single issue, and everything looked really great throughout. I think that, for me, I think I first seen his work on the Wildstorm because I checked it out because of Warren Ellis, but I didn't know he was the one on this book, and it's great. Great stuff. So I'm very glad to have read it because of that, because this was, like I said, it was a little bit different. He was bringing some different things to the table with this than he would with Warren Ellis's book, because he's pretty specific about kind of the type of storytelling and scenes that he kind of asked the artist to draw, I think, from his script. So he was able to let loose a little bit more here, it seems, and also depict some horrific stuff, which I think he did great. Secondly, I wouldn't say I was very confused by the plot. It was a little bit, I guess, maybe a little bit confusing at times, and you can tell by the end of this volume there's more to come. Like, more would probably be revealed throughout this whole series, and you kind of had to be interested enough to continue with it. For me, it was just an okay read overall, though, and I don't think I'll be continuing with it personally. But the story centers around this character, Astrid Mueller, who's basically like the like a guru, like the person that's almost like the head of like a cult, essentially, or like a group. It's hard to categorize basically what this place is, but basically the clean room is this place where like you go to, and once you go into it, you could leave cured, essentially, I guess, if she straightens you out, sorts out your life or your issues that you've had, and then you leave like a completely new person, or you basically leave having been driven insane, or you get killed in there, and it's basically just a spot for you to almost cleanse yourself, or for them to essentially brainwash you and to bring you over to their side. And I believe I've heard this book was almost like her take on Scientology, because there's a lot of weird things in here where it could relate to science or like what this higher being is. And but like I said, it's not like, it feels like a cult. This is definitely probably her commenting on maybe the religion of Scientology, because of the fact of all like the weird mixture of things that are going on in this book, and maybe the way that people look at that religion, if you want to call it that. And but in doing so, like I said, there's like some of the people in this have like some crazy like they trip out, like some hallucinogenic moments, like where they see kind of horrific kind of ends to people that may have died, or things that they were traumatized throughout their lives by. And it's more like a self-exploration of the people that kind of fall into this cult. They fall into this like movement of people, like, again, if religion, if you want to relate it to that, through the Scientology thing. And then there's another character who's like a detective in this, who I guess her husband read this Astrid Mueller's, the person who's the head of this group's book, and was enlightened and like kind of moved by it, and like it kind of changed his life. But then eventually it led to himself killing himself. And the more that she kind of investigates it, and the deeper that she kind of gets into it, she learns more and more about the Astrid Mueller person and her followers and what this is. And, you know, like I said, along the way, she's trying to get closer and work her way into it, and she sees horrific things that happen to her husband, like in her mind or in real life, as a result of them interfering with her life. And then once she kind of gets into the weeds, they fuck up her job, and they basically just manipulate her life through their connections and people that are connected to their group, to basically force her to come and end up helping them or work for them, like basically redirecting her as a result of her life falling apart around her back to their grasp, right? And you know, that's how these kind of things work. They know people in higher positions of government, or people, influencers, people that can be swayed. One of the people that they talked about in this was like a famous, I guess, movie star or something, that basically had talked about these group of people and praised them. So there's a lot of social commentary and things on Scientology or religion, or the way people, you know, like cults in general, or just these followings, these movements of people that believe in something, and they don't really, you know everything about it, or all the deadly dealings that go on behind closed doors. So yeah, if you like any of those type of themes, if this sounds interesting to you, if you're just in for something that's very strange or weird, or if you're a fan of Gail Simone's, then this might be worth checking out. For me, I kind of, but I would also say, if it is something that interests you, maybe pick up the first 2 volumes. I mean, if even, or if you can find these on the cheap, like, it's only 3 volumes, right? So I may feel differently if I read more, but given I only read this first volume, it wasn't enough to keep me kind of interested in going. I needed a little bit more of an explanation as to what was happening in this. And, if it was only the 3 volumes, if it was only like 18 issues, this may actually have rounded out to a very interesting, solid little Vertigo series. It definitely felt like a Vertigo series, I'll give it that. And like I said, the art was fantastic. But for me, this was a little bit of a pass on reading anymore. But, it was interesting. It wasn't bad. I just, while I feel I understood everything that was going on, I would have liked a few more answers and maybe a little bit more of a clear storyline that was kind of following throughout the whole thing. So that's Cream Man Vol.1. And last but not least, we got the Ice Cream Man Vol.1 through Image Comics. This is written by Maxwell Prince, art by Martin Morazzo. I heard that this was another good series that Image was bringing out. It's basically like an anthology series of sorts. Well, it's written by the same people. It's by the same team, same writer, same artist, but every issue is essentially basically like a one-shot weird story, as they describe it, of something of like horror or sorrow or something that happens, to someone in their lives. And it always connects back to this Ice Cream Man character. Like, he's basically the character that he's just some strange person that poses as an ice cream man in this town, but it seems that he's part of like a bigger kind of thing. I don't know if he's death or if he's like a demon, but somehow, like, when he comes into town, weird occurrences end up happening to people. He makes his way through each one of these characters' story by appearing at some point in it and maybe either dealing like a life lesson to them or has some comment or just a passerby for that matter. And yeah, just somehow he's always connected to what's going on. And, a couple of stories in there are really interesting. One of the stories is about this kid who finds like this like spider in the woods, and then he starts taking it back, and I guess he's like, he doesn't have the best home life, or he's, one of these kids that's like a loner kid, and he ends up taking it back, and it's like some crazy poisonous spider, and the spider ends up killing his family, his parents, his mom and his dad, and then he just leaves their rotting corpses there in the house, and for like weeks he's just kind of making, like just coming home and just like ignoring the fact that the dead bodies are sitting there, and he's just like fending for himself until like the cops somehow like came across like a missing persons incident because they hadn't shown up to work for a couple weeks and tracing it back. And then you got another story about 2 drug addicts, and one where the girlfriend was trying to get off the drugs, and the person she was dating, the guy, he basically was he was struggling with it, and he was at home, and she needed to go out to get him a fix because he was so fucked up he couldn't even get off the couch. And then she ended up bringing something back to him, and he ended up ODing. And then basically that moment in her life was so scarring that she ended up going out and becoming clean as a result of it. So, and again, and like, I think whoever set her up with the thing that basically made him overdose was the Ice Cream Man. Like, he was the one that kind of put that into play. The Ice Cream Man kind of came across like that kid in the woods who found the spider. So like I said, he kind of, it's one of those, like, almost like he's the horror host, or the guy that's like, the thing in the middle of everything that connects everything else. And whenever he's around, bad things happen to these people, and there's just these little one-shot stories. And for that's the main reason why I didn't like this setup of this. I'm not a hugest anthology fan. I thought the art by Morazzo was fine. It's not bad. He's kind of like a poor man's Quietly, I'd say. I mean, Frank Quietly, definitely some of the detail or the way that he kind of inks or pencils, like it's very similar. Like, he definitely, maybe you could say, is part of that school, or definitely took some inspiration by him. But nowhere near as good as Frank Quietly, in my opinion, but I can definitely see it. There is some interesting horror elements. The writing's not bad. I just think, for me, for the setup, the way it was, I thought it was going to be like a more structured series, like more like an ongoing kind of by arc storyline kind of thing through Image Comics that may be a horror comic. But this was more, like I said, it's just like and there is a through line between everything, and maybe in subsequent volumes, like it'll be developed more to the point where it does become a story like that. But for me, just having a different story every other issue, and they weren't always the strongest for me. This was just okay. So this will be the last volume I also end up reading of this, I think. But I think there's like a few volumes so far of this, and it's still going right now. And from what I've heard, I think it's a pretty successful book for these creators in Image Comics. So, I might be alone in that. It seems like a lot of other people ended up liking this series, and which is why it's still going on, right? It's not like a short-lived Image series. So, if any of that sounded interesting to you, or again, you're just in the mood to read some more different types of horror comics, definitely if you like anthology type stuff or things where it kind of moves at a clip where you get a different story every other issue, this might be for you. For me, I did not think that's how it was. I just heard good things about it, so I checked it out, and I found out it wasn't for me, but it certainly wasn't bad. But yeah, anyways, all right, that does it for my reads this past week. And moving forward, I don't think I'm going to have any theme stuff coming up, just kind of whatever comes across my interest week to week. I know the last couple of weeks leading into this with the spooky reads and also some of the manga stuff I've been talking about a lot lately. It's been a little bit more kind of centered in on certain things, but, look forward to more. And like I said, I'd like to do some more theme stuff somewhere down the line as well, but week to week, it's really just more what kind of piques my interest usually for the most part. But if anything, I'll let you guys know if we're going to be centering in on anything specific. All right, guys, take care. See you next time.